Okay, we are ready to go.
Awesome, thank you. Welcome to the March 11th, 2024 meeting of the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. My name is Nat Kalani and I'm the chair of this committee. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Burr and we're joined by District Manager Jesus Perez. This meeting is called to order at 6:33 p.m. As a reminder, New York state law requires all community board members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there is time for the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. We need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. If you're able to take minutes, please let us know.
I can take minutes.
I think the last two times.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Just to change it up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you volunteering though. All right, thank you. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
The meeting members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Jim Collins,
Present.
B. Disman,
Present.
Nat Kalani,
Present.
April Marie Lassiter,
Present.
David Lowenstein,
Present.
Steve O,
Present.
Reshma Patel,
Present.
Steve Perez,
Present.
Roberto Ruiz Melendez.
Present.
We have a quorum.
So on the agenda, I want to make a quick change to it. I think what we should do is move the citywide statement of needs discussion first, just comes after the public hearing. And then I'm thinking we do the term limits one. I know Marty's here to talk about that, and then we can do the budget process part if there's time, but I want to focus on the statement of needs today. I don't know if I need like a motion to do that or how that works.
Ask if there are any objections.
Okay, yeah. Are there any objections to amending the agenda in that way? All right, sounds good.
So you just said the agenda amended?
Yeah,
It is amended.
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
The agenda as it is amended, has been adopted, I guess. The minutes from the February 12th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the February 12th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CV6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, community members who are here in person, if you have questions about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I will identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom. I'll identify you so you can speak. All committee members, it is extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. The chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should only be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. All right, so with that, we'll go into tonight's agenda. We'll start with the public hearing. The public hearing for the citywide statement of needs for fiscal years 2025 to 2026 is now open. If any members of the public want to speak on this, please indicate that by raising your hand if you are here in person or indicating as such in the Q&A feature of Zoom. Once you indicate that, you will be granted the ability to speak on a first come, first served basis. You would have up to 3 minutes to speak. Does anybody raise their hand?
No.
Pinged? Okay. Sounds good. The public hearing for the citywide statement of needs for 2025-2026 is now closed. I think we can move into talking about it for us as a community board here. So Jesus has helped us draft a resolution, which we can talk through. I think just to start, it would just be helpful for us to level set on the various initiatives that we were like looking at, and then we can like go to the resolution afterwards. I think for this, I'm sure you guys all saw the very long SON. For us, we're just gonna focus on the ones that really are relevant to our district, because that's sort of where we should talk about it. And I think there's a real benefit, to actually submitting one here, just so the communities where like most community boards don't submit one of these responses. So I think there is a real benefit to us actually doing one here, having a response, and we can get it passed at full board. I think one that we could start with is one that is important to us as a community board. Is just like, it's not specifically one of these, but just something that we're thinking through is just pushing for community board space. If you guys went through the longer one, there are a lot of, community boards that have specific requests of saying, we want more space, we want space in general, and different levels of that. So part of what we've included in that draft resolution, and we can discuss how we want to approach this committee, is really just breaking that out and teasing it out and saying, among the agencies, it's worth including sort of a row for community board related requests, so that folks can see really how many requests are related to community boards and give that more priority, but also just to continue to like emphasize the need for space. I think while we don't have specific requests in here, I think it's just important for us to continue to have that dialogue, continue to prioritize it, so that when we do have requests that come onto here, it does have that sort of push of like, it does have real space in here rather than just one of the longer tail of requests. I'm not sure if folks have anything to add on that one, or folks have reviewed the resolution and have any thoughts there.
I mean, I had a question, because in the past, we haven't done a resolution, we've just written a letter and sent it. So is the idea that we would send the resolution, or we also have a letter that we send back to OMB?
I think it would be just the resolution. I don't think we can
Okay.
do a letter and a resolution.
Yeah.
I think it gets to the same thing.
Yeah,
You probably know more about the letters that we've done in the past than I have, candidly, but I think like, I don't know if you have a view on like.
no, my
Yeah.
concern is that will OMB, I don't actually know if they even read the letter,
Yeah.
but a resolution might be something that, like, will they read it, I guess is the
Yeah.
question, because of the way the format is and everything. I think it's a great idea to have a resolution because it will be on our website, but
Yeah.
also discussing it at full board means that people are thinking about budget requests right now as opposed to when we go in October.
Mhm.
And so I think that's very beneficial, and we will send it to all our elected so they can see what hasn't gotten funded, and maybe if they have money, they can allocate. So I think it's great to have a resolution. My only concern with the resolution versus letter is because OMB usually asks a response in letter, would they not look at it? Because they have so many things that they're juggling in addition to this.
If I may speak, some of the thinking behind this is that, one, the letters sometimes get tucked away and then they get sent and then they never get thought of again, where a resolution would be on the website and it can be something that members could sort of look through the archives and sort of not forget about. Secondly, occasionally you'll have some members that say, community board speaks through its resolutions. So, by sending a letter just like that, and many of them don't get voted through full board, is it really as official as it really should be? And so that's part of the thinking why it was sort of drafted as a resolution. But one distinction to make is what this is the citywide statement of needs for facilities, which is not to be confused with the district, the statement of district needs, which is all the budget requests and all that stuff that goes to, that OMB sends to everybody. This one is directly going to the Department of City Planning. The city planning uses this to inform the mayor.
Okay, so I was confused. I thought it was like that letter we sent to OMB. So then this is much more specific,
Yes, it's much more specific.
Yeah.
I see B has her hand raised.
Thank you. So I have to say, I thought the resolution was very well written. And I fully support the idea of breaking out space needs. I think we're struggling with this now, even though, we have a lease for a period of time, finding place to hold full board meetings, even committee meetings, depending on the issue. So in reading the resolution, I think it is a placeholder for us, but it is a need for all community boards, especially if we're gonna change the rules of the game as to whether people have to be present for meetings or whether exceptions will exist. Very timely and a very well-written resolution.
Now, would you like me to go to the resolution?
Yeah, that'd be great. I think we can tick through the community board parts of it and then we can circle back to the other parts. Thank you.
Um,
So yeah, I think how we can do this is like look at the community board relevant parts and then we can go back and then we can sort of work our way back and forth and just tick through the parts of the resolution. So yeah, some of these whereas are just giving like the context.
Let me know if you'd like me to go to any of the whereas. clauses
Yeah,
that
I
figured.
didn't, yeah. We can move, yeah, so this one has like the grouping active, all active proposals, that would be the main one to flag here. It's just like bringing those in the community boards into like one line on the agencies. I'm not sure if you guys saw, there was like that one section of different agencies, a number of requests. So by putting all the community board ones together as one line there, I think it gives it more like credence and weight of like, this is one area where there are a lot of requests.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to do it that way.
Yeah,
I just wanted to suggest that we clarify that language, because when I read it, I was confused at first. They're already grouped. What we want them is broken out as and called community board,
yeah,
right? It's grouped as other.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, we don't want just grouped. It's already like that.
Yeah.
We wanted to say community board specifically and how those are broken out as opposed to the other category.
yeah.
So whatever.
We can amend it. Let's just do it right now.
Amend it, yeah.
Let's just, yeah. Brendan, can you go up to that bullet of the community board? That black bullet.
Yes. So what
So
would,
include a new category called community board, even that would aggregate all of the requests from the community boards.
so it would be include a,
New category.
which would,
Aggregate all the requests from community boards, something.
Well, the language is still there, all active
just-
proposals by community boards.
You could just like, yeah,
I'll put a strike through here for now, just. Instead of outright deleting the text. Actually, the strike through.
It's under, format, I think. I've seen it, it's hidden away.
I think it's text.
What are we looking
There
for?
it is.
There, yeah.
They hide it away for some reason.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit different than Word, right? That's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah,
I was thinking including all of the active proposals.
Yeah, we want to keep that.
Yeah.
again, but
yeah,
We can clean it up later, but like that is like the spirit of what we're trying to get up there.
that's what I wanted.
No worries, this is the format, doesn't need to be too fancy, like I think it gets that,
Yeah,
yeah. So I think that one was relatively uncontroversial among this group, so I think we can basically, unless others have thoughts on the community board point, I think that was just one sort of easy win for us to keep pushing for there. So taking through some of the others, there's the HPD Code Enforcement Office. So this is one where, Brittany, if you go back to the SON summary,
go back to the SON summary?
yeah.
Okay,
Albert's pointing out, so this is like the HPD Code Enforcement Office. And this was one where basically they wanted to, their lease is expiring in June and they wanted to open up, they wanted to like figure out a lease for a new office, and this is in our district. To me, I want to hear others' thoughts, this felt like pretty uncontroversial. There's, you know, leasing office space, it's not like it's going to change like anything drastically. I think it does help just to have more offices in our district that are like, you know, being used. So I felt like that one isn't like, there's no like work or anything that's gonna disrupt the community, it's just people going into an office.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to walk through them all, but I think that's an easy one.
And one thing to note with that one, the agency is looking at this district, but they're looking at other districts in this borough and also in the Bronx. Their main restriction is that it has to be in Manhattan or it has to be in the Bronx. So there is a possibility that ultimately they'll find a space outside of this district, so we need to just be aware that it won't necessarily be in this district, but they're looking in our district.
Yeah. And I don't think this is something like, at least personally, I feel so strongly about that. I'm like, I need to go advocate for them to be here. I think it's good if they end up like coming here, but it's not like it's like a huge game changer where I'm like, I want to go advocate to our electeds to like make this happen. Okay. Sorry, Brandon, can you go back to the resolution? I think we need to show those sections. And could you go down just to the be it resolved right below? So we just have this, which basically just says that we support them doing it in this district.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, it's easy. Okay, cool. The Poison Control Center one, I haven't reviewed it today, but I know we were trying to learn more. Sorry, Brent, can you go back to the?
Yeah, that's
We just heard back from them
Okay.
today.
Could you like give any context? I only have pretty limited info from the SOM.
Sure, so the Department of Health, indicated that they are hoping, one, they do want to stay in this district because they need to be near, Bellevue Hospital. Their staff and, you know, the staff at Bellevue and activities at Bellevue lend themselves well to each other, and so they need to be in close communication. The site that is listed in the report on 23rd Street is actually not the site that they're looking at right now. The Department of Citywide Administrative Services, which is the agency that oversees real estate transactions for agencies, is actually looking at another site a few blocks away, towards the farther reaches of our western part of our district. Like, if literally there was across the street, it'd be in District 5. So it's a little farther away from Bellevue than this site is, but they didn't elaborate, but for whatever reason, this is not the site anymore. But there, you know, it's a fairly it's a phone center essentially, and an office space, so it's not like any poisons or anything will be housed there or any noxious uses. So again, this may be similar to the HPD one, a very uncontroversial one. But one thing that the committee might want to consider, for those who are not aware, the current location of this poison control center is on 26th and 1st, 455 First Avenue, which is the public health building. That building will eventually, if the city gets its way, will be demolished and redeveloped for life sciences uses. Catty corner to that, at the Hunter Brookdale site, that site will also be redeveloped into the big Spark Kips Bay project that everyone's been hearing a lot about. While Department of Health, we asked the Department of Health if they had engaged in conversations with EDC, asking essentially, you know, you guys are pretty much where we are now. Could you find us a little bit of space in this huge development? It's not an immediate term solution in that these buildings probably won't come online until early 2030s, but eventually maybe they won't have to rent anymore. They didn't have any information on that, but maybe the committee could, and there's a draft resolved clause about this, but maybe the committee can advocate for one of those projects to make some room in their future developments for this to be sited there, because those sites are right next to Bellevue, so they would certainly be much more conveniently located for this important use. But again, that's something that, you know, you guys would consider. There is a scoping hearing for the Spark project coming up next week. or the week after, I think. And if maybe this makes it into the reso, maybe, the person who's gonna go and testify for CB6 could maybe even mention this too. So, there's no guarantee that it'll work, but, it might be a way of supporting a sister agency, and keeping a very important function close to where it needs to be.
So the poison control center is basically a call center for someone being poisoned.
Yes, that's one of the things they do, but, the building is going to be demolished and the public health lab, which is there now, they're moving to our specially built, they're building a special campus uptown in Harlem. But the poison control center can't go with them. So they need a place to be. So for the time being, they're gonna rent some space. But, one of the things that I've noticed in looking through the report, I didn't take statistics on like how many agencies are renting space. But, maybe if the agencies didn't have to rent so much, they wouldn't constantly be getting evicted essentially, because many of these sites are where they're looking for spaces because they have to give a reason why they want to move. And the agencies, time and time again are saying, they won't renew our lease, they won't renew our lease. And so maybe this is a way of nipping that in the bud essentially.
Do you know why a lot of them have like renewal issues?
It's unclear why. I can say from our personal, as an office, we had renewal issues. We were at a space across the street from the UN. It was a rental commercial building and the building wanted to go condo. And the city was not willing to purchase the space for Community Board 6. So we were attempted to get kicked out. So I can't speak to why other agencies, other landlords don't want to keep renting to a city agency, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, it could be also just, but from my experience with nonprofits, we always have renewal issues because they can just get more money nowadays. And this is not even our district, which is, main commercial here, but this is happening on the outskirts in Brooklyn and Queens. Nonprofits are all having issues because the rents are just going up and some corporate or like a dentist office will come in and can pay more.
Right.
Yeah.
And the city can be tough to deal with sometimes, like it took the city 18 months from identifying this space to signing the lease, 18 months. And not many landlords are willing to put up with that.
We lost 4 spaces prior to getting the space at UN because the city took too long.
Oh, wow.
But they have procurement processes that they need to go through, which private or nonprofit, non-city, non-government affiliated entity doesn't have to. So that could be a reason too.
Yeah, my take on this one was like, this is fine. I think it actually is a good point to include it in like the siting work of giving them like a space they actually own, I think, given these difficulties. But I think like wherever they're doing it, whatever the new address is on like the west side, it feels acceptable to me. I think we would support this, but I'm not sure if others have thoughts on that. Yeah.
Would you want to put into the statement to, that more city agencies like ours should be in the new space that's being developed at the Hunter campus?
I'm like open to it. I don't know who's doing the testimony, if that's like land use or.
Land use is spearheading that. I believe it is Majed that's going to testify. I believe we recently, like in the last month or two, let me check our reso tracker, passed a resolution asking for that very thing. Obviously we didn't at the time, we had not fully reviewed this, so we did not know that the Poison Control Center was having its, doing a search. But let me, give me 2 seconds to look at the reso tracker, because we may already have that within our reso, if you guys want to, re-emphasize that in this one. I don't see any harm in that.
When they presented at the full board a couple of months ago, I asked them directly and, we didn't think about that. Maybe we will.
Yeah, in at the February 14th full board meeting, this reso passed, and the final resolve clause is that we request a space for the community board and other community events to be included in the proposal. So not the most forceful way of expressing that, but it's in there. So you guys, we could either make it more forceful, more direct, or leave it since it's already in another rendering.
I think it's worth reiterating it, just like, we could add a clause being like. I don't think exactly would word it, but like, it just basically like be a resolve clause just saying. I don't know how you word a reiterating clause here, but like, yeah, you just reiterate that
Yeah,
interest.
or we can always say that, you know, the city should make an effort to have city agencies.
Yeah.
Have permanent space,
Mhm.
because it's disruptive to have to.
Yeah.
continuously-
Brendan, scroll down to the bottom resolve. There may be one already there that's sort of. Okay. CB6 reaffirms its position that community boards, being city agencies, which are charter mandated to hold monthly public meetings, must have adequate facilities that would accommodate district office space, meeting space for committees, and larger spaces for full board meetings.
Now,
Now,
below that resolve clause,
that one does not, that one's a very general, it's not as specific as
It's
what
just
Marty.
included right there, though.
For
For instance, at the Hunter,
I wonder if a way to go. A more general way to go wouldn't be, it's like, whenever the city has property that it's redeveloping, one of the first things it should consider is whether it can fit in community boards. And then we can throw in Marty's thing, because there is another community board, there are 7 community boards in this report that are looking for spaces. One of them actually is on city property, and it does appear that there are plans for that building to be redeveloped. I believe it was DEP that owns it. And to keep the community board within there. But in our case, in the case of Spark, and in the case of the public health building, the community board was the farthest thing from their concern, because it wasn't even brought up until we brought it up. So that might be a way to go. It's sort of, it's a little broader, but it's a way of supporting other community boards in their search.
Yeah,
so
Something like, be it further resolved that Manhattan Community Board 6 calls on the city to whenever redeveloping a building on city land, I guess the 2 should go there, not in front of that, on that phrase. To always
like always consider ongoing needs of,
of community boards or other city agencies. In the area. And we'll go with, consider. This, instead of ongoing facilities needs, because that's what
Yeah.
specifically what this report is about.
I'm sorry, Steve, I thought you had your hand raised. You still want to say something? No, yeah.
I was just poking around the city planning website, so.
Yeah.
Hi,
Go for it.
I'm Michael Cohen, and I'd like to ask this. What is the problem with the site on? Is it necessary for the Boise Control Center to be in this area? What are the negative impacts if it leaves this area? And I think it'd be good if it could be put in the building in 455 First Avenue. That would be my preference.
I don't know, specific building, I think like the main focus is we want it to be near Bellevue, so I guess it potentially,
The agency
Yeah.
itself wants to be located near Bellevue. They
Yeah.
say it's important for their work.
and I don't think there's like a lot of negatives to wherever it is, like, it's basically just a call center. So they're just going to, like, pharmacists will just be going, or nurses will be going there and just doing calls, so I don't think it has like a negative impact, it's kind of like any other office occupancy.
Thank you.
Do you folks have any comments on this result clause?
Well, do we want to add what Marty was suggesting? Because that's still not in there.
Sure. The specific site.
I guess, for example, in the redevelopment of the Spark Kips Bay site, the community board should be granted facilities within, I guess, sounds a little bit awkward, maybe.
Should be granted facilities able to hold committee meetings and committee and full board meetings.
And office.
Oh, yeah, well, we just take the line just from that next clause, copy that same,
Yeah.
copy that same language. It gets a little repetitive, but maybe that's what we have to do. We have to constantly
Yeah.
be beating that drum.
Oh, yes. Should be granted adequate facilities that would accommodate.
Yeah, you can just copy those two lines just straight up. I'm good with that. Yeah. Okay, I think we can go back to the SON and just go through like Department of Sanitation consolidation. This one, my latest understanding is it's kind of out of our purview now, right? I feel like the two that they were considering are no longer being considered, like the ones that were in our district.
So yes and no. The report obviously shows two sites within our district that were being considered. Speaking of Spark, the 425 25th Street site, which we all know as Brookdale, but it seems to be claimed now for the Spark site. And what the community board knows as the Solo site, but it's what Solovia Group wants to put a casino on. We reached out to the Department of Sanitation and they confirmed to us that both of those sites are no longer under consideration. And that the 25th Street site, the Brookdale site, has no more funding and is not under consideration. As a follow-up, we asked them, so can you confirm, is this project dead? Or are you still looking for other sites? We did not hear back from them on that. So I don't know whether we'll hear back from them in time for this resolution. But given that this project has been sort of languishing for 10 years already, it's probably not pressing. But that's one of the I believe there was a question over the weekend as to why the project is listed as ongoing as opposed to, like, I don't know, canceled. But one of the reasons it's considered ongoing is because they have not informed the city and they haven't informed us that this search is dead. There is another site that's being considered outside of our district. I believe it's in East Harlem. I did not ask them about that site because it's not in our district, so it's not really our affair. But that's why we asked them, at least proposed to ask them in the resolution, to officially remove the two sites in Community District 6 from this write-up, since DSNY seems to say that they are no longer under consideration. We have no idea how long they have no longer been under consideration. It could have been that they were scrubbed last year, but they've been in the report, so it's probably good for the report to be updated.
And then for the East Harlem, I know they had like two other locations. I think they were like south of us.
We didn't
Like,
ask about
yeah.
any sites that were not in this district.
Yeah. Cause yeah, there's like the 270 south and then one more other one. So yeah, I think for this one, I just think since we don't know it's gonna be in our district, I don't think there's like a real like value taking a view, but in the draft resolution, basically it's just confirming that these two should, like the SON should be updated to basically just remove those. I think that is probably the best way for us to get at it, because this basically lets you say that like they're not like, this basically just shows that to the extent of our knowledge, like our district is not under consideration for this project, but open to others like want to change that or like anything like that, because I don't think it's like imminent in ours, given it's been there for a while and the two locations aren't going to happen.
We can continue with DSNY to, you get them to say one way or the other, is this project dead, or are you guys can still keep looking? And then maybe for next year's report, guys can maybe say something else, but you know, the question about how the board feels about whether there should be a sanitation barrage in this district, there are already resolutions from years ago opining on that, but this is probably not the venue for this to relitigate all of that. If you guys want to do that separately at some other meeting, maybe you can. But given what we know right now, that officially the project is, that as far as we know, the project is not dead, but they don't seem to have, because I asked them, do you have any other sites within this district? And they didn't.
Right.
So.
And B, I see you have your hand raised.
Having been at a number of sessions where we've spoken about the sanitation garage, I think factual to say that these two areas are no longer being considered is all that we should limit ourselves to now. If other things happen, we have the ability to always come back with resolutions. This is certainly a topic that was very highly debated within the community board. So I think what you have there now is fine.
Yeah, because I agree with Jesus and B that like this isn't a place to relitigate like our view on the garage. It's more just like making sure the SON is saying what we know and correctly stating the facts. So I think this gets at that in that way. All right, and then the last one I had on my list was the jail at Bellevue. I don't know if Jesus, you want to walk through the latest updates there?
So, the report kind of has two broad categories of projects. There are projects that are active, and then there are projects that are not active. And if they're not active, it's either because they were abandoned, or because they are well on their way to completion, or because they are completed. This jail one is actually well on its way to completion. In about a year's time, it will be completed. We did ask the Department of Corrections to provide us with a little bit of information because, yes, sometimes the information within the report is a little sparse. And supposedly this has been sort of percolating since 2019. It was announced during the de Blasio administration. It only first showed up in the citywide statement of needs last year, though. It was in last year's report, which we didn't respond to. And so essentially it is what it sounds like. The Department of Corrections is building a little jail within Bellevue Hospital. However, there has already been something called the Bellevue Hospital Prison Ward there for, as they say it, years and years and years. They weren't able to give me the date, but years and years. So this thing, there was actually an article recently in the last week or so, week or two, in AM New York that sort of shows pictures of how far along they are and what services and programming will be there. Essentially, the reason the Department of Corrections is building this is because the Health and Hospitals, which has a division that concerns itself with caring for the health needs of incarcerated people, said that the facilities that are currently present on Rikers are insufficient. And since the city plans to close Rikers eventually, might as well, and since many of the patients already have connections to Bellevue, why, and there's already this prison ward there, why not just build something there, essentially a jail that is equipped like a hospital for inmates that desperately need it. The prison ward is for very short-term and acute things, like let's say an inmate gets stabbed, assuming he's not gonna bleed out, and there's time to get him to Bellevue, that's where they will go for in the prison ward. This prison, this jail that they're building now, and that's gonna be done in about a year's time, that is for things like, let's say someone is incarcerated, but it turns out they're dying of cancer. And chemotherapy is they have to be treated and they have to be taken to the hospital because they can't do that at Rikers. Because of all the logistics and all the formalities involved, a trip like that, which would maybe take 45 minutes in a cab, could take 9 hours, and that's a lot to put someone dying of cancer through. So their solution is better to house people in those kinds of situations at a jail within a hospital. It's a unique model, is what they call it. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the system. Bellevue will be the first, but there will be 2 other hospitals that are going to get these little jails. There's going to be North Central Bronx is getting one, and Woodhull in Brooklyn, I'm going to say, Brooklyn is going to get one. It's just that Bellevue's was brought online first, so in spring 2025 is what they expect it to open. And they've already committed hundreds of millions of dollars to this project.
I think that's the main thing is like, when I think about what we would say here, it's kind of like, this is kind of a done deal to an extent. Like, I don't think it's like you can oppose it and they're gonna be like, okay, well, we already invested this, it's not really gonna change. So when I think about like what we would use like our political capital, and as much as we have some for, it feels like there's nothing to say there, but I'm not sure if folks are like thinking there's another thing we should say or get around that in some way.
I mean, because I haven't heard any community opposition to this. I don't know if
Yeah.
people know about it, but there was an article, I want to say it was in the Times today, but maybe it was another, maybe it's a New York article, but about America's aging prison population, right? And it's actually gonna be a crisis at some point because you're gonna have all these health issues. So actually, kudos to Bellevue for thinking about this sooner.
Yeah,
Well, I'm also wondering if doesn't this align with our own community needs statement, which we asked for an expansion of psych support services and supportive type beds of it in the district. And if that could, somehow this can also meet the needs of, and I know the Manhattan Borough President has also is
Yeah.
trying to expand.
No, that's,
The beds that are at
if
Bellevue.
it's more spaces, I was thinking
Yeah.
prison population moving over, but you're right, but if there's more supportive beds, it could
I
be
mean,
that
they're
way too.
building a whole new facility, like,
Yeah.
let's take advantage of the fact that
Yeah.
that's kind of what we asked for.
yeah. Is it an extension of it or is it like,
It's a completely different thing.
Okay.
It's gonna, I asked them that, because in the report, it's a little misleading, because in the actual body of the report, they're talking in present tense, like the thing is not built yet. But like in the very beginning, like in the table of contents, they call it an expansion. But they made very clear that the prison ward thing is one thing, this thing that they're building is a completely brand new separate thing.
so it does get at that, I agree, yeah.
How about adding it as welcoming it
Yeah,
as an opportunity for the community? A welcomed addition to the community, because it's a done deal anyway.
yeah,
So
that's true.
you're not gonna say NIMBY,
Yeah, I think because we wanted to, I think we
But if
could
there's a
connect
way to
it.
maybe go
Yeah,
back to our budget request.
yeah,
Take some of the language from there and say, this is how we would like to see synergies
yeah,
with this new project.
Though since it's not considered active, because it's already well on its way to completion, sort of in the vein of sort of not saying more than we absolutely have to. Maybe not commenting at all is something the committee would consider.
Yeah.
Susan, I don't quite understand what you meant, because I liked your suggestion of making it very specific in the need statement. as to this particular project that we might be considered for the facilities, you don't think that it should be more pointed? The same way we were saying how to make everything stronger in terms of it, making it specific.
I guess I'm not sure what difference it makes at this point, since it's like a well on its way to completion. And you know, if one were to think of, I guess, how to phrase this, I guess the optics of it. You know, while this project is in line with city priorities, is, you know, if you're just in passing thinking, oh, they're gonna build a jail in Bellevue Hospital, is that really, you know, gonna conjure up warm and fuzzy feelings in the general public? But again, it's up to the committee.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add by saying, oh, this is in line with I actually think we still need more supportive housing and assistance, so I would rather keep it as we still have an extra need.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, I see you have your
That's
raised.
Yeah.
exactly what my point
Right,
is
yeah.
that they're bringing a facility.
Yeah.
We need to emphasize the need that
yeah,
exists,
yeah.
and therefore we see this as an opportunity to meet the needs that we've already put out there in
Yeah.
our budget
Yeah.
requests, so.
Sorry, Jim, go for it.
Do we know the capacity of this thing, or what kind of security what kind of security will be available to
So,
cover the patients?
I'm
I'm kind of upset that they sandbagged us on it, you know? They didn't put it in until last year, which doesn't bode well.
According to the article that came out recently, about 104 patients. But as far as the security, since this thing is technically a jail, it needs to meet all the local, state, and federal requirements that any other jail would need to meet. So those are obviously, we don't deal with those very often, so I don't know what they are, but it had to go through those sorts of things, and it got state approval anyway, late last year, so. The security standards that any other jail has to meet, that is more traditionally thought of as a jail, this new unit would have to meet as well.
So there'll be Department of Corrections officers available to.
If that's what's present at any other jail, that's what'll be there.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
So where are folks' minds on like including something or not?
I would vote for including something that it's, as I mentioned, is aligned with our budget needs statement.
I'm in favor of being more specific also,
Yeah. I'm open to that too.
to make
yeah.
them focus on, quite frankly, our needs.
Yeah, I'm inclined to keep it out, just because I wanna keep our needs. I feel like by saying this, it makes it think like they're addressed some of the need.
I'm sorry, Liz.
I feel like I don't wanna keep it in, because I don't even wanna say that this is in line with our needs, because I wanna say our request for supportive housing is completely separate, and more mental health facilities in this district is separate.
Oh, because I guess what Reshma's saying is, if we acknowledge that, if we say that this is supportive housing, the city will be like, well, look, we gave you supportive housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But it also, but this is not supportive housing, this is
Yeah.
a jail.
Yeah.
That's completely different.
B, you have the floor?
Yeah, I agree with what Rashma has said. I would leave it out because it is a jail. And by the way, Jesus, I have a question for you. I don't remember. The VA hospital on 23rd Street used to have a similar lockup when I first started to work with Social Security. They had a similar lockup that dealt with veterans that had mental facility problems and were violent. Do you know if that still exists? Because I think that's the model that they're trying to use.
I don't know, but we can certainly find out.
Yeah, so I don't think this is supportive housing, so I wouldn't expand it. I would leave it, be as it is.
And Rupal, you have the floor. I think Brendan will.
Let me unmute.
Yeah,
Rupal.
promote you.
You should be able to speak now, Rupal.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Reshma and what B said. I think if we include this in, then like Jesus said, city will just be like, oh, look, we met your needs, but this is a jail. It's not supportive housing. So it shouldn't be included as part of supportive housing. So yeah, I agree with Reshma.
Yeah, I was thinking we probably like maybe when we do the budget process or some other point, we can address and be like, look, this was like a good idea, but it doesn't address it in some way in like another resolution. David, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, just agreeing with Reshma to exclude for now.
I see Steve's hand is raised.
Yeah, go for it, Steve.
Again, with Reshma's as well, supporting it, taking it out.
Okay, I feel like general consensus is not to include it, so I think we can sort of leave it out. Those were the main things I wanted to talk about on the SON. Do folks have anything else they wanted to address? Otherwise, we can just quickly review the resolution ahead of voting on that. Brendan, could you pull up the resolution?
Yep.
Thank you. So yeah, I don't know if folks had a chance to review this resolution. If not, we can sort of tick through it. A lot of the changes were things that we either discussed today, like, it was based on a lot of things discussed today, along with the changes we made live here.
Does
Yeah.
anyone have any strong preference against the word changes or updates? Initially it was changes, but I'm wondering if these are more updates. And I think it won't freak the city out as much if we call them updates.
I like updates more.
Yeah, because we just really want the report to be accurate.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think updates is good, because some of the stuff has been there for a while too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it's all new.
Yeah, we have no idea how long ago it was that
Yeah.
DSNY stopped considering these sites. So I guess Brendan, remove the word changes from the resolved.
Yeah, I don't know if folks have any comments. I'd also like entertain a motion to vote on this if folks are ready to do that.
I'll make a motion to vote on it.
Second, that motion.
Okay,
Also, we'll now take a vote on this motion by roll call. When your name is called, please answer aye, nay, or abstain or not entitled. Brendan will conduct the vote by roll call, as well as declare the results of the vote.
Jim Collins,
Aye.
Pete Isman,
Aye.
Ned Kalani,
Aye.
Ava Marie Lassiter,
Aye.
David Lowenstein,
Aye.
Steve O,
Aye.
Reshma Patel,
Aye.
Steve Perez,
Aye.
Roberto Ruiz Melendez.
In favor.
Okay, with everyone saying in favor, all 9 committee members, this passes.
Great. Thanks, Brendan. With that, I think we can move on to the discussion on the term limits. Marty is the other resolution, and Marty, if you want to introduce it,
Sure.
you have the floor.
I'd like to thank the chair of the committee for allowing me to present.
Thank you also. Right.
You wouldn't be affected as a public member, even though, Eva Marie was on the Parks Committee when I was chair of the Parks Committee in the early 90s. Go back a long way. Jim, great avatar picture. Okay, I want to read something before we get to the resolution. Gail Brewer at the time said term limits would serve as a gift to the real estate industry developers equipped with land use lawyers, architects, public relations staff, lobbyists and the like, could in theory exert pressure on those inexperienced newcomers who Brewer says are likely to be insufficiently adept at handling complicated land use proposals. Community board land use recommendations are advisory and non-binding, but council members are often loath to side against them. Imposing term limits, she wrote in an email from a personal account would serve as a disruption to the manner in which community boards protect communities. Land use and zoning regulations are hard to learn. It takes time, she wrote. It would have the effect of allowing developers and their lawyers, who are never term limited, to dominate development negotiations because those long-term members will be gone. City Council Speaker Corey Johnson does not support the measure, telling Curbed that these aren't lifetime appointments. They must be reappointed by elected officials who are term limited. I think that provides enough checks and balances for the community boards, which allow us to keep the good members with experience and wisdom. It also, our job as elected officials to always be looking to appoint new civic-minded leaders who are interested in serving. Council member Helen Rosenthal also believes long-term community board members are needed to fight back against development. She says, there is a certain amount of turnover every year on the boards, but her key objective is that board members who fully understand the land use review process are desperately needed, especially as the city continues to go through a development boom. Sarah Crean, spokesperson for Rosenthal, said in an email. Brewer and Rosenthal are joined by 3 other borough presidents, Bronx Ruben Diaz, Queens Melinda Katz, Staten Island James Otto, in their opposition to the term limits. Those 4 borough presidents in August signed a letter first reported in the Daily News, which makes the case that adding term limits serves to further empower real estate developers and lobbyists and technical advisors who appear on their behalf before the community boards. Term limits would induce a brain drain on community boards, they wrote, and would weaken their ability to serve as advocates for neighborhood concerns in the development process. As soon as the term limits would go into effect, which would be in 4 years, I, B. Dismond, Jim Collins, Paige Judge, Mark Thompson, Letty Simon, Sandra Sherrod, Susan Steinberg, Ann Sullivan, Larry Shire, Sandra McKee, Raj Nair, and possibly Kyle Athold, Elvie Barroso, Matt Roberts, and John Keller will all be off the board. That's where we'll start. So the resolution is to the rescission of term limits provision from the 2018 New York City Charter revision. The revision included provisions to limit community board members to 4 two-year terms, whereas the intent of the provision was to create opportunities for new voices and leaders on all community boards and add diversity to the community boards, which tend to skew old, white, and making them more reflective of the community represent. Whereas the process of selecting community boards has previously and continues to be half the board members proposed by city council members in the district, the other half by the borough president, while the borough president then appoints all the individuals. Whereas the current selection process already enables the elected officials to appoint the various diverse members to the community boards without any limitations, they are able to not reappoint any member for a new 2-year term, and I'll get to that a little bit later again. Whereas in the last 10 years, Community Board 6 has averaged a 15% change in membership in years 2022 and 2023 being 20% and 22% respectively. Whereas the new class of members for 2024 Community Board 6 will have over 60% new members being appointed in the last 5 years, which does not yet include term limitations for the longer term members. Whereas the first year the term limits take into effect, only 12 members will be affected, representing about the same number of new members appointed every year anyway. Whereas the measure will actually weaken community boards, many of which rely on the experience of long-term members, the measure will have the boards reinventing the wheel by removing the longer-term members whose collective memory informs and enriches the board's approach to current situations with the knowledge of previous efforts which may or may not have been effective in accomplishing specific goals and objectives. And whereas as diversity in membership has already been achieved by the choices of the city council persons and the borough presidents, the term limits provision's main effect is to weaken the community board's effectiveness. Therefore, be it resolved, Manhattan Community Board 6 urges the appointment of the 2024 Charter Revision Commission and for them to enter a ballot provision to rescind the community board term limits provision of 2018 charter revision. Outside of B, Jim, and Eva, who knows Arnold Lehman? Well, Arnold Lehman chaired this committee for a few years, prior to which he became board chair and made me chair of the committee. The following year, he was not reappointed. After the year after he was his board chair term was over. So council people can do what they want. No, it's up to you.
Thank you, Marty. Open to hearing thoughts on term limits resolution, term limits in general. Laura?
I just had a question.
Yeah,
Rather than the term limits, since I do know that there have been a number of people that have been active for a number of years in the community board, is there a limit on the number of people that can be on the board rather than having these term limits? And I do agree, younger people and more should be and more reflective of what's happening in the community should be on the board, but is there a limit as to the number of people that can be on the board?
It's 50 people.
It has to be
It's
50
50 people.
But would there an answer of not having the limits to expand the number a bit? So that you have more of an infusion of newer people, but you still have the wisdom of the people who've been
More
on.
often than not, we don't have the 50.
Okay,
We have the 50 as of April or May, whenever they make the appointments, then invariably people stop dropping off, or especially newer members whose reason to come on the board was not done immediately. They give it 3 months and either they get bored of the board or the board did not handle the problem that they wanted and we never see them again. Currently, there are 8 or 9 openings. And the borough president, even though pretty much every year since I've been on, when the borough president comes to the board meeting, I'll ask them the question, are you going to appoint new board members when there are openings? They always say yes, they never do. And so right now we have 42, I think, or 43 board members out of the 50. And so there's always space.
yeah, the way I think about it is like how Marty put it, right, is like you get like the new crop of appointments in like April, May, and then you have some turnover throughout the year, and then you sort of refill it. But I think it's like, I don't think we're often at that 50 number. And the
and
50 is max.
to me, there's a sort of a contradiction. There's talking about term limits of people who've been here for many years. When you really are not filling the entire, I want to call it quota, so to speak. So
They do fill it as of the April or May,
Yeah.
when the new people come in but.
I mean, the problem is, fundamentally, like, I actually think term limits have been good for the city council, term limits and our elected officials. The problem is that this is a volunteer position, right? So what happens is some people join, like you said, and they're a single issue reason they join the board. And then when that issue doesn't get addressed, or it gets addressed perhaps, right? Then they don't come to the meetings afterward.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no real obligation for them. If you don't want to be reappointed, there's no reason for you to come again. Right? And then I would argue also, what maybe we mentioned this resolution, not one of the other reasons, if you want diversity, then you need to, first of all, someone who's a working mother, or if you're like a 25-year-old person, you could be out tonight, having fun, or you might be working late. Why would you come to this meeting? Right? But if it was on Zoom, it might be easier for somebody. If you childcare, like that's another issue. And then the other issue is it's volunteer work.
No, but the thing is, we all volunteer, but to me, the term limits is not an answer for making the board constantly current. That to me, there's certain problems as to why people or single issue people are not saying that, that is the problem. It's the revolving door of newer members. The problem is not the term limits of people who have been here and devoted their time and know the issues and how the city works. To me, the term limits is not the answer. We're not addressing what the real problem is. It's volunteer, single issue people. And that's where I think the focus is. Also, the term limits would eventually affect all of the community boards, isn't that correct?
Okay.
That's what I mean. And so the real problem is not term limits. It's making people want to stay once they join, because I have seen it also with a turnover where it's a single issue, and once that's resolved or it's not, the person doesn't come anymore. So to me, this is not, we're not addressing what the real
Yeah,
problem
it's
is.
helpful. Sorry, I want to get to the folks on Zoom, but
Okay.
you're like three of them, but yeah, I think that's right. I think then there's a separate topic of like, to Reshma's point, how do you make this more accessible?
Yes.
Do you make it a Zoom type thing or something like that? But let me I know we have other folks on Zoom, so B, I saw you raised your hand first, if you want to address.
Since I'm one of the people that Marty mentioned, and I have a leadership philosophy, that I think a real success of leadership is bringing on people and mentoring people and moving them forward into positions of responsibility and authority. And I think term limits help to do that. I don't agree with Marty with the elimination of term limits. I feel that if you look at it, if people are on the community board for a number of years, given what we're doing now with training from the borough president's office and other things, there's enough time to have people knowledgeable in these things. And just using the land, the issue of real estate and stuff doesn't persuade me, since there are so many other issues that the community boards do handle and take care of. So I'm looking, for example, I don't think we've gotten into diversity. I mean, I'm going to be very direct. Look at our own community board. Of the potential 50 people, and we don't have 50 now, only 13 are women. If you look at that, that certainly doesn't reflect the society that we're dealing with. And a lot of the reasons are, you know, young mothers with children and things of that nature, but there are enough professionals. So I am not a supporter of eliminating it. I think you work with training people and you really have successors. And new people have new ideas. And we shouldn't always nix something because it was tried before and failed. So, Marty, I don't support your resolution.
Well, thank you, B. Steve, if you want to go.
I think kind of supporting what B have stated. For example, in our district, our last census poll shows we have a greater female population than men. And that alone doesn't reflect what we have on our community board. So definitely double clicking on that. The other thing is that the private industry, for example, spends a tremendous amount of resources training new people to get them on ramp to just operational functionality, just to get them working with the way it goes, let alone the culture that exists in that organization. And it's the same thing here. There's a lack of training on ramp or not only the classic stuff that the Manhattan Borough President's Office offers, but specific tailored training that's pertinent to CB6 doesn't exist. And lastly is accessibility. The new generation of people, including myself, this was only accessible because in the past 5 years, this was available on online. It was streamable. You could see archives of it on YouTube. Being more accessible, having more avenues of communication, when people can do it on their own time, does broaden your volunteer base, because that's what we're all talking about, is trying to get new people on board. In order to do that, you need to be more accessible. So it's a multi-pronged approach. Obviously, it's not a one-step thing. The term limits doesn't seem to speak to me with that. I know for my personal example is that, and others who are new, it was accessible to whenever I can attend them. I didn't see the CB6 office until 6 months ago, and I've been on the board for a number of years now. So that's just to highlight how accessible the meetings were, the information, the reso tracker, like all that stuff adds to making it more available, expanding your volunteer base. But the big dearth is the once they're on board, you want to keep them on board. The retention is the training. There's nothing for CV6 specific, and we heavily rely on Manhattan Borough President's Office to fill in those gaps.
Jim, you have the floor.
Yeah, I would reiterate what Steve just said, but also my overwhelming view on this is what the voters passed. This is what the voters said that they wanted term limits. And of course, I am affected the same as several other people that were mentioned. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. I would laud an orientation session. I would laud perhaps getting employers giving their staff time to attend community board meetings, Manhattan employers especially, and efforts like that. But I don't think we should overturn the will of the voters. Failing a new charter reform proposal where this could be reconsidered, I think we're stuck with it. And insofar as this resolution, I have no choice. Even though I generally agree with everything that Marty has said, I have no choice but to abstain. This is the best I can do.
Marty?
Again, it's up to the city council members when they are appointing each year to consider the diversity and to consider,
diversity. I'm a Republican.
I don't.
If you-
More Republicans and conservatives, as well as, socialists and people of all stripes and designs. It's up to the council people to do it, and they can if they wanted to. The Bronx has 300 openings, and as of a few days before the close of the application period, they had 150 applications. So as Eva Marie had said, it's going out there and getting the people who have ideas and having them apply. And picking those people for the community boards. Getting rid of a half a dozen people or a dozen people is not going to increase the diversity of the boards. It will decrease the experience. At the last meeting or a couple of meetings ago, there was a question of, expanding the term of the board chair to 5 years, even the board chair for 3 years. How does individuals get the experience of chairing committees, et cetera, and working their way up if they're term limited out right from the beginning? The year after I was chair, I chaired a bylaws revision where I put in term limits for committee chairs to be 5 years, thereby allowing leadership to grow within the board. People yelled at me, of course, how can we live without Ed Rubin heading land use? Ed Rubin was the head of land use for 20 years, or Marcia was the head of education for 20 years. We got along with it because new people came in with new ideas, and they then were able to get the leadership experience within the committees, within the community board, to then become board chair. when I, as board chair, the day after each board meeting, I would have a meeting for newer members to deconstruct the board meeting that had occurred, to say why this resolution, what was that person's idea in how they were presenting or going against it. Of the 7, 8, 9 people who attended those meetings regularly, 4 then became board chairs over the years. So it is possible to build leadership and to build interest. But not if you get rid of the people who've been around.
Thanks, Reshma.
So, I have to say, I'm a little torn about this whole thing because to what he's saying, I learned so much. When I started, there wasn't as much training from the borough president. And now you have the Civic Engagement Commission, right? There's all the CEC, he's doing the budget training. But I learned so much from Claude Winfield, who went through, and trained the newcomers at that time, but just talking to him, and then Rick Eggers, who chaired this committee, and so many other people. I mean, all the stories that you tell, I learn a lot from it. So I think that's very valuable. And again, I go back to the point that I was making about the volunteer thing, is because you're putting term limits on something that people are only doing this if they really care about it, right? And the other aspect of it is you have the time, and we don't really make it accessible. And the diversity issue is the people who are going to be able to volunteer their time are going to be older people, right? Because if you're retired, you have that time. The issue is, though, not just this community board, this impacts the whole city. And if you look at community boards in places like Southeast Queens, or you look at like places like Bay Ridge and those areas where the community boards really don't reflect the communities that they're serving anymore. And it's because they have large influx of new immigrants. And that's and I think that's a job that the Civic Engagement Commission has to do, to try to get new Americans, new New Yorkers engaged in this process.
Thanks, Steve. Or sorry, Jim first, then Steve. Jim, you have floor. Jim, you're muted if you're talking. All right, we'll come back to Jim. Steve, why don't you go for it?
I think the discussion of diversity or expanding new people into chair roles almost warrants a separate side discussion, because like mentioned before, Reshma mentions there was no training when she first started, and now they're starting to introduce it. I've stated that there is no training that's specifically for CB6. There's no definition of what each one of these chairs do beyond what's written on the webpage. There's no sense of mentorship. Some organizations use a form of mentorship of people who have the experience and know the guided way of what is in a chair position or a committee chair position. There's no program to help bridge that gap. It's almost, they have to learn by observing multiple meetings. That's just one of the few mechanisms, not saying that is one of the ways, but there's no sense of those either. So people consume the education, training, how to elevate themselves in different ways. But right now we don't have anything that exists today other than, someone boldly stepping up. I think a side discussion on how to elevate volunteers and mechanisms, it warrants a separate discussion and listing what those are, what are achievable, what are not, what requires funding, what can be done today. I think it warrants a side discussion, if that's even budget and government affairs.
Yeah, I think that's what came out to me, Steve, in the conversation too, is like there is like, especially given the term limits backdrop we have today, there is an importance of like how do you sort of like write down all like that knowledge so that we're not in a case where it's like, look, in 4 years we're going to lose a lot of it. I think that is, I don't know what committee that falls under, and we can figure it out, but I think that is like a good point, because I remember like when I started, Kyle was the one who like led these trainings, teaching us things about resolutions and things like that. And I feel like it probably varies by the chair, by just the year, by the committee you're on. So I think that it's like a good point that stood out to me, is like there is just an importance of just writing these things down, institutionalizing it a bit more. Yeah,
I just want to make one quick comment, and that is on the argument about the experience, and you need the experience in the institutionalization. I sort of see that argument, but at the end of the day, when I look at what is the purpose of the community board, it's to be simply a voice, a representation of the community. That's what, there are no professional qualifications to be on the board, there's no education qualifications to be on the board. It's just the voice of the community. For the institutional structure, we rely on the staff. They are we are public servants, they are public servants and civil servants. We are not civil servants, so I would not be in favor of eliminating term limits because I feel like the purpose that we serve is to simply be the voice of the community. And as long as we have new people coming in and being the voice of the community, we are serving the purpose of what the community board is.
Yeah, I agree with that. To me, it's like, I think for me, the argument sort of against term limits that you're losing some of this knowledge, but I think to your point, like the core thing the community board does is just having a voice, having opinions, and you really get that by like just having engaged members. And I think there's a separate topic of one, how do you keep members engaged and how do you figure it out? And then two, like what are like the main things to be effective? But I think you can address those even in like a term limits backdrop. Jim, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Marty, do you know when those of us with longer terms are going to be turfed out? I haven't really kept track of it.
We all have we have two more 2-year terms. I don't know if you were just renewed, you had this one and the next one, so 2007, 2008.
Okay.
2006, 2007.
All right.
So, all of us will be.
So you and I can go volunteer and be auxiliary cops. How's that sound?
I'm involved in a few things anyway, but I really don't care for myself necessarily, but I just don't see how getting rid of a dozen people who, while every year there's a 15 to 20% turnover anyway, that all the diversity and all the new ideas of the community can be brought in, yet there will still be those folks around who know how to ask the harder questions when things are being presented that would not necessarily be good for the community.
I know it's like 7:55, so just keeping track of time. I think what we'll do is we can take like a couple more comments that we can just sort of take like a quick poll on the resolution, but just see how folks are feeling and we can figure out what to do from here. I know B, you've had your hand raised. Sorry, I'll come to you after B. I just had her hand raised for a while.
Oh, I thought this gentleman had raised.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, go for it.
Well, usually.
I would let B go first.
I'm making a comment, I am opposed to ending the term limit. I think it's a good thing to provide an opportunity for there to be a bit of turnover on the board to be guaranteed almost that, like you get new board members in every couple of years and that you get to have a different variety of voices on the board.
Thanks. Sorry, B, go for it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to factually mention the whole area of mentoring, because I think it's an important issue. When we were redoing the bylaws and looking at the position of vice presidents of the community board, one of the areas that we really focused on was responsibility for mentoring and coming up with a mentoring program. I think certainly in my discussions with Sandy, I really felt the need that we need to emphasize this and we need to have a formal structure. I know Jesus and Kyle tried some of that, but I think we have gone year by year and not really instituted. So I think that should be one of the recommendations that we have generally and talk about at exec. So I just wanted to say mentoring is very significant. CB6 mentoring is very significant. Thank you.
Thanks. Rupal, do you want to go and then we can take the last group of people here?
Yeah, I just have a really quick comment. I'll try to keep it short. I agree with Steve and what he said about the whole what is the idea or the purpose of the community board, right? It's the new voices that keeps coming in, and each generation has its own voices and its own concerns. But as far as the knowledge being lost, I kind of disagree with that in a sense that it's only lost if the members who, like, let's say are term limited out are no longer willing to still continue to help in the background on the sidelines, right? So for example, Reshma mentioned she talked to Claude Winfield, right? He mentored her. So that mentorship or that help and that knowledge can still be there. It's not necessarily lost as long as the community board members who are term limited out are still willing to just help and guide the new members that are coming up. So I'm not sure I agree with the whole knowledge being lost part of it.
Thanks. I think what we can do is just take a quick vote by hands if folks are like, just take people's temperature. I just don't want this to go too long. So folks just not speaking about the resolution, but just generally in favor of term limits, please raise your hand now.
In favor of,
Yeah, I think I.
Sorry,
Yeah,
in favor of the
this
resolution, sorry,
Yeah.
in favor of the resolution.
In favor of the reps. that's what
Sorry,
we're
in
voting
favor
on
of
now?
removing term limits.
Of
like
removing term limits.
Yeah. Okay, and then folks opposed, so basically folks who want to maintain term limits, please raise your hand now. Okay. And then folks abstaining.
It's abstaining, it's not voting against the term limits. You just want to.
Sorry, I was saying it's Ruppel just to people's temperatures because it's already 8, so it's like,
Okay,
yeah.
all right then, so we're abstaining from having term limits, is that what you're talking about now?
Sorry, so yeah, so
Abstaining
like,
from the resolution.
yeah,
Like you can either, so he already asked if you were in favor of the resolution or against it or abstain.
yeah,
Do you?
Oh, I'm against the resolution.
Okay.
So- all right,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
I have a real question for those of us that are affected by it, as Jim mentioned, we have a number of us affected by it that literally should be abstaining, but if we do, you have a large number of your committee abstaining, so how do you want to handle it?
Exactly right.
Well, there has been no motion made, so there's no official vote. I think
Yeah.
Nat was just taking sort of a straw poll.
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, like if you want to consider this, right?
yeah,
So,
because I think I
So
don't
if
wanna-
it's a straw poll, it's yay or nay, it doesn't go into abstentions.
Okay,
Okay.
I didn't know the reformal was for a straw poll,
Excuse
but
me, so
Yeah.
yay is going to be if you're in favor of term limits, is that correct?
so yay is in favor of abolishing,
Of abolishing term limits?
yeah, in line with the resolution.
In line-
Sorry, it's confusing, but yeah.
Oh, okay, abolish it, so yay.
So,
is
okay,
abo-
let's
is
take,
abolishing.
let's do one more straw poll,
Okay.
just yay or nay, no abstentions.
Okay.
Okay, those who are a yay, which is in favor of getting rid of term limits.
Wait, is this gonna be recorded as a vote?
No, it's just a straw poll. I just want to get a sense of like, it's already 8 o'clock. I just want to get a sense of like where people's temperatures are. We can figure out if we want to come back to this or like where folks are.
Hmm.
Okay, so sorry. Again, yay, raise your hand if you're in favor of abolishing term limits on like a straw poll, just like preliminary view.
Yay,
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say yay then.
And then please raise your hand if you're a nay of like not in favor of abolishing term limits. All right, thank you guys. I'll figure out what comes back. I'll come back to this, but I just wanna wrap up the meeting. So, I'll waive my chair report. If any member of the committee has, and we'll punt the budget process to next meeting. But if any member of the committee has any old or new business, please raise your hand now.
I just wanted to call out the acute housing crisis that continues to happen in the city. And after watching the State of the State address from the governor, where she talked about how we have to bring back some carrots, I wanted to kind of ask the committee if there was any sort of interest in a 485X, which is what the governor has talked about as the sort of replacement for 421A. some sort of reso talking about our support for that, or a support for a tax abatement from the city, so that the city could have the right to do that sort of tax abatement from the state. So do a forfeit, so kind of like 45X, but on a city level. So I just wanted to hear kind of what the committee thought about that.
You should
Or if
come,
that
yeah,
is
you
a
should
land-
come to our housing and homelessness committee. We're discussing like that kind of thing.
Perfect.
We started discussing it last meeting, but it's a pretty active point of discussion there, so.
Got it. And
Yeah.
would that be a joint resolution between, or?
With
would
land
that-
use, yeah.
Okay,
We're figuring it out kind of live. I know like we're trying to schedule a joint meeting with land use,
okay,
but
great.
yeah, that is top of mind for those committees. Great. Thank you for bringing it up, though. It is
Yeah.
like an important issue.
I sorry, I hate to bring this up, but there does seem to be in the reso on the statement of district needs, there's this one random resolve clause that's sort of unfinished. So either the committee needs to sort of like tighten that up or take it out.
Brennan, could you flash that up?
Sure. Just a moment.
It's the second resolve clause. I guess it was. Oh, I'm sorry, they're right there.
Oh, yes, this one.
So I guess the discussion was, do we want to say anything specific about the relocation of the poison control center? Meaning like, do we want the city to try and find space for it in Spark or in the redevelopment of 455 First Avenue? Or do we just want to say nothing? We haven't spoken to the health department about this, whether they even want this. It would just be something we'd be doing on our own. It seems like they might, but we don't know. I should have straightened this out before we
Yeah,
vote,
sorry.
but I don't know that this necessarily will
Yeah,
shift anyone's vote on it. So the options are take this out completely, or we tighten that language out.
I would just take it out, given that we haven't spoken to the
Health department.
health department.
And I think Jim's.
I would second that.
Jim, go for it.
Yeah, with respect to old business, I had raised several times before
All right,
on this committee.
Sorry, let's finish this first, Jim, and then we can go to old new business. I'm also in favor of just striking it.
Yeah, and I agree, we should take it.
Yeah, we'll just can strike it. Okay, cool. Sorry, Jim, go for it.
Yeah, I had raised on this committee several times before with respect to the congestion pricing. And prior to the hearings, I read through the economics, the environmental impact assessments. There were 2 done in June and 1 in August. They say that there will be a reduction in demand for parking of 16%. And in our district, that is likely to affect a number of residential parking garages in residential buildings. Several of these are in the area of $100,000 and up, so that it will end up affecting rents in our district, as well, obviously, as the New York City parking tax. I think at some point this board should ask for the environmental impact assessments that were done to be set aside and an entire environmental impact statement done. The work that was done for the environmental impact assessment was basically gun decked. They said, first of all, they didn't address anything below 55th Street. And second, with respect to the parking. And second, they didn't address the environmental impact. They simply said that those garages could be repurposed, which is kind of a nebulous term, given the space. So I would suggest to this committee and this board, even though we have not weighed in on opinions, that we should, any opinion with respect to the comment period for the MTA hearings, that we should nevertheless, please let me finish.
No,
I know, but please let me finish.
I appreciate
That we should make an assessment.
Jim,
That we should ask for an environmental impact statement.
they've already issued statements, and if we want to do that, it should go through transportation.
No, they didn't.
Just one voice as a committee, as a board, we've like agreed and like exact that this falls under transportation. So you should take it up with their committee, you should take it up through there. I don't think it's appropriate to have, although it, arguably could fall under, I understand your argument, but I think as a board, we should speak with one voice and that goes through one committee. So I do appreciate your arguments, but I think that's how we should approach this.
Well, as I said, they didn't do a statement. They did an assessment, which is different. And
Sure.
they concluded that there's no environmental, that there's no economic impact.
Yes.
And there obviously is an economic impact on tenants in our district.
Yeah. Point is well taken. I just think we should leave it to the transportation committee. You can definitely take it up with Jason and that committee. They've spent a lot more time on it than this committee has, and it is their topic. So I just don't think this is the space to really push for things like that. Otherwise, open to taking a motion to adjourn now.
Second.
Awesome, thank you. There's no objections, we'll adjourn the meeting. Great, the meeting is adjourned at 8:08 PM.
Thanks.
Thank you.